Welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us today because, well, we're diving into a story that completely flips everything we think we know about fate, destiny, and the sheer power of our own choices. We're heading all the way back to the Qing dynasty for a truly gripping historical thriller. It kicks off with a poor scholar who had literally studied bitterly for years. He had so little money he had to rely on his friends just to scrape together enough cash for the journey to Nanjing to take his imperial exams. But as you'll see, this trip doesn't exactly go as planned. It quickly spirals into a high-stakes story about the ultimate power of human agency over what seems like a completely inescapable fate.
So, on his way to Nanjing, our scholar stops by a temple and bumps into a fortune teller. Now, this isn't just your run-of-the-mill fortune teller. The text specifically notes this guy is incredibly accurate, famous for his piercing reads on people. He takes one look at our scholar and instead of, predicting exam success, he actually recoils in shock. He delivers this absolutely chilling prophecy: withered appearance, drifting spirit, the look of death is upon you. He tells the scholar that within 5 days, yes, just 5 days, he's absolutely going to die. He basically tells the devastated guy to abandon his exams, turn right around, and rush home immediately, just to get his own funeral arrangements in order. Imagine getting a 5-day death sentence right when you're on the absolute verge of your life's biggest milestone.
Okay, let's dive into part 1, a desperate choice.
Totally convinced of his impending doom, the heartbroken scholar just gives up on his Nanjing dreams and starts the long, sorrowful trek back to his home village to die. But on this return journey, while he's lost in his own deep despair, he stumbles upon a scene that is somehow even darker and more urgent than his own situation. He finds a woman standing by the water in a state of sheer terror, getting ready to end her own life and the lives of her 3 innocent children. The scholar finds out she had accidentally accepted fake silver in a transaction. In her world, this was a total catastrophe. She was so terrified of the brutal beating she'd get from her husband for losing their money that she saw suicide, taking her kids with her, as her literal only escape. So you have 4 lives hanging by a thread over a handful of worthless counterfeit silver.
And this brilliantly illustrates the real crux of our story. On one hand, you have the fake silver, which is about to cause a family's death. Then, compare it to what the scholar has: exactly 10 towels of real silver. Now keep in mind, this is his entire life savings. The whole shebang. It's the only money he has to his name, gifted by friends just so he could survive the trip. But in a moment of pure, overwhelming compassion, he secretly swaps his real silver for her fake silver. He absorbs the loss completely. He rescues the mother and her 3 kids, handing over his one and only lifeline, while he's basically marching toward what he thinks is his own grave. Which brings us to part 2, escaping the earthquake.
So now our scholar isn't just doomed to die in a few days, he's completely penniless too. That night, exhausted and broke, he finds a spot to rest right beside an old temple. And as the sun goes down, the tension really peaks, because this is the exact night his 5-day death prophecy is supposed to happen. He falls asleep completely expecting it to be his last night on Earth. But then, this miraculous sequence of events unfolds. Around midnight, the scholar has this incredibly vivid dream where Guan Yu, the legendary historical figure, suddenly calls out to him, practically commanding him to wake up and get out of there immediately. Moments later, the scholar jolts awake. Heeding the dream's urgent warning, he gets up and moves away from his spot. And shortly after he clears the area, bam! A massive earthquake strikes. The ground shakes violently, and instantaneously the ancient temple he was just sleeping next to completely collapses into rubble. Think about that. If he had stayed asleep, if he hadn't moved, he would have been crushed to death exactly as the fortune teller predicted.
Now let's look at part 3, the changed face.
Surviving this catastrophic event triggers a massive realization for the scholar. That heavy, oppressive cloud of doom just completely lifts. His mind feels clear, open, and totally liberated. Realizing he's somehow managed to dodge his 5-day expiration date, he makes a pretty bold call. He's not going home to die. Actually, scratch that. He turns right back around and marches straight to Nanjing to face his destiny and take those exams. On the way, he crosses paths with, you guessed it, that exact same highly accurate fortune teller. And notice the fortune teller's stunned reaction here. He looks at the scholar's face and says, "Wait, your original death look has completely vanished. Instead, there's a radiant glow of light between your eyebrows." The fortune teller figures out immediately that the scholar must have performed some massive act of hidden virtue. Because of this totally selfless act, the fortune teller predicts a brand new future. Not only is the scholar going to easily pass the imperial exams, but he's going to rise up to become a high-ranking official. And as the source text confirms, that is exactly what happened. He passed with flying colors and achieved an incredibly high status.
Which leads us to our final section, part 4,
Mastering Your Own Destiny.
Now you might be wondering, what does this all mean for us? What a fantastic historical thriller, right? But the source text doesn't just leave us with a cool story, it pivots to the deep, philosophical takeaways. It bridges this ancient Qing dynasty text directly to our modern lives, essentially asking us to evaluate how much control we actually have over the script of our own lives. The text anchors its lesson in this really powerful ancient quote, "Destiny is created by oneself, blessings are sought by oneself." This is a total, radical rejection of the idea that our lives are purely predetermined. Sure, the text acknowledges that our past actions might set the stage, bringing certain fortunes or misfortunes our way, but it heavily emphasizes that the dynamic power of free will, the choices we make in the present moment, can completely overwrite a fixed destiny.
The source provides a framework based on Buddhist teachings, but it presents it as a highly practical, empowering toolkit rather than just some strict dogma. Just look at these 3 pillars. First, one compassionate thought turns karma. Literally, just the mental shift toward empathy kickstarts the process. Second, one good deed increases blessings. Taking action compounds that thought. And third, a sincere, altruistic heart is the actual engine that changes destiny. Think about our scholar. He was supposed to die. His karma was seemingly locked in. But because he sacrificed everything to save 4 absolute strangers out of pure compassion, he actively rewrote his own future. He literally turned an omen of death into a life of prosperity.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is this. We've got to shift our perspective. The text strongly urges us to stop complaining about our circumstances, stop resenting heaven, stop blaming the universe, and definitely stop believing that you're just stuck with a bad fate. Instead, it wants you to focus on the power you wield right now, today. It teaches that simple, everyday acts, like keeping a good heart, speaking kind words, doing good deeds, literally accumulate over time. They build your blessings. And as those blessings grow, your entire life path naturally shifts to accommodate them.
The ultimate truth that this explainer reveals is that every single day presents a brand new choice. You are the author. You hold the pen. The scholar essentially bought his new future with 10 taels of silver and a whole lot of empathy. Which leaves us with one incredibly important question to chew on right now. If your destiny is entirely in your hands, what good deed will you choose to do today? Really think about that as you go about your day. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you next time.